Good morning. Hi. Hello. We are so glad that y'all could be here with us today. My name is Emily Mullins, and I'm the co-president, along with my friend Kristen Fellows, who is in the back, of an organization called Enactus. It stands for Entrepreneurial Action Us. And our reason for existence is to promote, free enterprise and different projects that we develop throughout the year. This particular project is to help, this particular project that we developed is to stress the importance of personal finance in college. At the end of the spring semester, we traveled to competition to compete against dozens of other schools. Our meetings are Fridays at noon upstairs in the admin building in room 210. We would love for you to join us anytime if this is something that you think you would be interested in. Also, at the end of the event, we will be scanning your ID cards so that your professors know that you were able to attend this event. So now, if you would please help me in welcoming our first speaker and the Executive Vice President of Lubbock Christian University, Dr. Brian Starr.
Emily, thank you. I am excited that you guys are here today, excited that we get to spend some time talking about something that will be very important to you, to your future and even to your present. I have 3 kids because I'm old, and long ago when my kids were very young, I was driving them home one day, and my middle son Caleb, sitting in his little car seat in the back, suddenly said, and I quote, "I love Mommy. The first thing I'm going to do when I get home is hug Mommy, and then I'm going to poop." Now, one day you might be a parent and you'll get to experience such joy and humor from people who are barely speaking and so forth. But that reminded me, after I got over the laughter, that from a very early age, life is really all about setting priorities, isn't it? First Mommy and then take care of other things. And I appreciate about the fact that my young son was getting his priorities in order. Today we're going to talk to you about money priorities. And we're very blessed to have with us a man that will come take the stage in just a minute, Mr. Clint Thomas, who is a fellow SHAP, by the way, 1998 graduate of Lubbock Christian University. We are proud to have him back on campus. He works in Denver, Colorado. Been there for 13 years with M.J. Smith and Associates from 2009 through 2013, one of the top financial advisors in the United States of America. We are proud to have him on this campus to talk about money matters. A fellow alum, a fellow SHAP, and somebody who has a lot of experience in this realm. But I also want you to hear another voice today. I want you to hear the voice of the Lord. I want you to hear the words of the Lord. The tools that we try to put in your hands are good tools for money management, and I hope that you will use these tools to manage your money. But more importantly, I hope that you will use the Word of God to keep money from managing you. Do you know anyone whose money manages them? How many of you know someone who's kind of managed by their money or their lack thereof? Do you know anyone like that? A couple of you do. If you don't know someone like that yet, you will. Their priorities have been wrong, and they've gotten themselves into debt, and they'll spend the rest of their lives trying to get themselves out of debt. Or they have no debt problems at all, but they've got so much money and they consume and consume and consume and are never satisfied, and it's all about the money and making some more money, and their money manages them. Listen to these words from Jesus Christ, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Therefore, I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today, and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Please remember, as we hear these words of wise counsel, that overarching all of these principles are the timeless words of Jesus Christ, the creator of the universe. You seek first God's kingdom and God's righteousness, and all these other things will be yours as well. Clint, we're delighted to have you back at your alma mater, Lubbock Christian University. Welcome to the microphone today, sir.
Well, thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be here and speak with you today. And I want to thank the LCU staff for inviting me here. And it's always great to come back to Lubbock. As he mentioned, I'm a financial planner up in Denver, Colorado, but it's always great to come back to Lubbock and to reconnect with LCU and be on campus. It seems like not that long ago that I was sitting where you are. When I think back on that and do the math, it's actually been about 20 years ago. I started here at LCU in 1994, so time does certainly fly, but I promise not to use the words back in my day during the talk today. As we get started here, just a little bit more about me here. My family is up here. My wife, Shara, I met here at LCU, and my two kids, Hannah and Ansley. And unfortunately, they weren't able to be here today. My girls were very disappointed because they associate Lubbock with Bahama Bucks. And so they were very disappointed that they would not get any Bahama Bucks. But, you know, Denver has some great things, but we don't have Bahama Bucks, unfortunately. So today we're going to dive into some different topics, and as it relates to personal financial planning. But before I go to those areas of debt and budgeting and investing, I want to tell you that you've picked a great place to go to school. You really have. You picked a great institution to get your education. A couple of years after I was in the workforce, after I graduated from LCU, I decided to go back to get my master's degree, and I enrolled at the University of Denver and to their business program there. And the first day of class, I was sitting there, and our professor had us go around the room and introduce ourselves. And we were supposed to say our name and where we went to school. And so the first guy introduces himself. He's sitting right next to me, and he says his name, and he says, I went to Stanford. And it was my turn. I'm Clint Thomas, went to LCU. The guy next to me introduces himself, and he went to Duke. And as we continued to go around the room, there were some big schools, A&M, Texas Christian, University of Colorado, Nebraska, all these big name schools, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I'm in a little over my head here. I don't know if I have what it takes to compete with these people. They went to all these big schools, and here's little old me that went to LCU. Well, fast forward a few weeks into the program, and you know what? I was very well prepared for that experience. And those people in the room that I was with had nothing on me because of the experience I had and the preparation I had from LCU. And today is a continuation of that preparation for you as it relates to your personal financial affairs. Because unfortunately, a lot of high schools, including the one I went to down in the Dallas area, they don't do a good job of teaching us about financial, how to manage our own finances and how to manage money. At my high school, we didn't have anything like that. We had economics class, but knowing what a supply and demand curve is not the same as learning how to manage debt. So I commend LCU for putting this together and allowing me to speak to you today. Because no matter what you do, no matter what your career is, you're going to have to manage your own finances and your own money, and it's important that you have some ability to do that. So we're going to talk about managing debt, and we're going to talk about several things there. But before we jump into debt, I want to talk about some scriptures from the Bible, and Dr. Starr did a great job of introducing us here. But just a couple of verses here from this one from Proverbs. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the servant to the lender. It's better not to vow than to vow and not fulfill it, from Ecclesiastes. And from Romans, give everyone what you owe him. If you owe him taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. Let no debt remain outstanding. Now, I know each of us in the room comes from different background, different upbringing, and we're all coming from a different spot. Some of you may have come up in your upbringing with the notion that all debt is bad and you should avoid it at all costs and never have any debt. As I read through Scripture and have looked at this, my opinion is that in some cases you have to have debt, but it's the way that you manage that debt that's important as we go forward here. So a few things there on what the Bible says. Before we jump into debt, I want to talk about credit scores. Now, my niece, who is up in Colorado, she just entered college as well. She's a freshman. Unfortunately, she chose to stay in Colorado against my advice of going to LCU, but I'll let it slide. But I took her to dinner just this past Sunday, and I asked her. I told her that I was giving this talk to you guys. And I said, let me run a few things past you that I'm going to talk about. I said, do you know what a credit score is? And she said, I think so. Well, not really, and kind of gave me a mumbled answer. Bottom line, she didn't know. And she's not unlike a lot of people. I didn't know what a credit score was when I entered college. So we're going to talk about what it is, but more importantly, why it's important to you. So I promise not to read slides to you all day, but this one I will read to you. This is the definition of a credit score. It's the number assigned to a person that indicates to lenders their capacity to repay a loan. It's a number between 300 and 850, and the higher the number, the more creditworthy the person. So a credit score is a number that's assigned to you, and it is an indication to a lender when you go to get a loan of your creditworthiness or your ability to repay. You may be saying, well, I'm a freshman in college. I don't need to worry about that. I don't have loans, or I don't have a credit card, so I don't need to worry about my credit score. It does impact you, and what you do today affects you down the road. A quick story about my wife before she was my wife, while she was here at LCU. She got a Bell's credit card. Do they even have Bell's anymore? I don't know. It's like Dillard's, JCPenney's. But she got a Bell's credit card while she was in college. And she was very diligent about paying that off. She never was irresponsible about it. But she had some purchases that she had on that card, and then she got the bill in the mail here at LCU. The problem was she had gone home for the summer and didn't get the bill in a very timely fashion. So she finally gets the bill. She pays it off, but unfortunately there were some late fees there because she didn't get the bill paid in time. But she paid it off and thought, no big deal. It's done and over with. Well, fast forward a few years, we get married, and then fast forward a few more years, we looked at buying our first house. And we were meeting with our mortgage lender, and he said, you guys do a great job with your credit, and everything looks pretty good, except for this one little entry over here, this Bell's credit card that had a late payment on it. And I said, well, we don't even have a Bell's credit card. And Shara said, well, actually, I did have one in college, and I had a late payment on that. And, she described the situation, but the bottom line was, it was on our credit report that she had a late payment. And that affected us down the road. So my point to you is, what you do today does affect you later on. It affects your ability to get a loan. It might affect the interest rate you have when you go to get a loan. And these days, more and more, it affects who you work for. It's becoming more and more prevalent where companies, when you're in the application or the process of getting looked at for a job, will require a credit score or a credit report. And if they have a candidate that has pretty good skills and another candidate that has pretty good skills, all things being equal, if the other one has a higher credit score, they might go with that candidate that has a higher credit score. So it certainly does impact you. A couple of things here. You do have the ability, each and every one of you, to get a free copy of that credit report, and the information's up there. And you might say, I don't have anything going on right now, so there's probably nothing on it. Even if you think there's nothing on it, I do encourage you to look at your credit report at least every 12 months because more and more we're seeing identity theft. And if someone gets a hold of your personal information, your name, social security number, etc., they could open a credit card in your name, and believe me, they're not going to pay for what they put on it. That's going to go on your credit report, and that could damage your credit report. So if you're checking that every 12 months, you can catch things like that and do something about it. So we want to talk about some good debt and bad debt. When I say good debt, I probably a better term is acceptable debt. And we're going to talk about a few of those things. You can see on the left side up here, we have home loan, student loan, automobile loan. We'll talk more about that. Really, that's probably not something to consider as good debt, but we'll talk about that. A home loan, I'm not going to spend much time about. I'm assuming most of the people in the room are not in a position to be buying a new house right now. But the only thing I'll say there is that whether you live in Lubbock or you live in Dallas or Midland or Denver, where I do, the ability for most of us to put down a chunk of cash to buy a new house is not very likely. So a lot of times for people, you have to take out a loan and a home loan. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing to have a home loan, but you have to be able to manage that, and we'll talk more about that as we go forward. So then we have student loans, auto loans. On the bad side of the fence there, credit cards that we'll talk more about later, and payday loans, which I just want to say avoid at all costs. Those are loans where you go and take an advance on your payday, but we're not going to get into that other than to say don't do it. So student loans. This is a quote that I like from Benjamin Franklin. It says, "An investment in knowledge always pays the best interest." Another real quick story, a good friend of mine that I went to LCU with, he was a computer science major, and he worked for his dad's company here in town, and he was going to school and working, and a couple of years into school, he stopped going. And I said, "Jay, why are you quitting school?" And he said, "Well, in my field that I want to go into, in the computer industry, you don't need a degree because I have a Microsoft certification, I have a Cisco certification, and I don't really need a degree. All I need are these certifications." And I said, "Okay, cool." And he did very well. He went and worked for a company called Nokia, which a lot of people probably don't even know anymore, but a big cell phone company, and got pretty far up and worked his way up and was doing very well. And one day I called him and I said, "How's it going? What's going on?" He said, "I'm taking some classes. I'm going back to school to finish my bachelor's degree." And I said, "Really? Why?" I said, "I thought you didn't need your degree." He said, "Well, I've applied at a couple of different jobs here at the company, and I keep getting rejected because I don't have a bachelor's degree." And so even with all the experience, all the certifications in his case that he had, he was not able to move forward because he didn't have a college degree. So I want to stress to you the importance of finishing what you're starting here. And if you have to take a student loan, that's okay. But we have to know how to manage that. And we'll talk more about some other things around that as well. Any guess what this number might mean? College graduates earn about 80% more per year than someone without a degree. And over a lifetime, it can add up to some pretty significant dollars. So that's what that represents. This is just a quick slide here on if you don't have a high school diploma, you're looking at earnings of around $24,000 a year, and you can see as you go up with a degree, obviously you have more earnings potential. So another reason to certainly finish your education, and you see master's degree on the end there with the highest dollar amount there. What I'll tell you with the master's degree, a lot of times when you finish undergrad, you might have some student loans, and so you might want to get your degree, but the last thing you want to do is go into more debt by going to grad school. When I worked at Merrill Lynch for a couple of years, they had a program, and a lot of companies do, where you can go and get your graduate degree and they'll help you pay for that. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking about graduate school, to consider some alternatives other than taking on more debt. And a lot of times, again, companies can help you do that. Last slide here, we hear a lot about the unemployment rate right now, and it's higher than anyone wants it to be, but with a college degree, you're certainly in a better spot than the general population in terms of being able to get a job. So my point to you with student loans is simply, if you have to have a student loan in order to get a degree, then that to me is an important thing to do. But we'll talk about some ways where you can maybe reduce the amount you're having to take as a loan as well. Okay, automobile loans. We'll touch on this very briefly. They were on the good side of the fence on my earlier slide. Really, they probably should be more in the middle. I don't really consider them something that you would want to take on if you don't have to. The average rate on a car loan, a 60-month car loan, is about 4%. Average price $30,000. That's $567 a month that you would be paying. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. But the other problem is, when you drive that new car off the lot, it loses 25% of its value. And then each year thereafter, it loses another 15 to 20%. So after 5 years, you have paid $34,000 for a $30,000 car that's now worth about $10,000. You don't have to be too much of a math major to figure out that that's not a great deal. So an alternative to that might be consider paying cash. And I have an example here now. This is going to be different for everyone, I realize, but if you take cash and you buy a $2,000 car and you keep it for 10 months and you save $500 a month, the $500 that you would have been putting towards a new car, and after 10 months you're going to have $5,000 saved up plus a little bit from your old car that you can sell, and then you have $7,000. That's a major upgrade in cars that you can do in less than a year. Now, I again realize this is an example, but the point is there's ways to purchase an automobile without having to take on a lot of debt, and a lot of debt that can really weigh you down as you move forward. A couple of other things here as you move forward in life. If you're in a city that has public transportation, carpool services, things like that, you can also reduce your expenses when it comes to transportation. Okay. So let's move on to the other side of the fence and talk about bad debt. And here we're talking about credit card debt. First of all, who in the room, raise your hand if you already have a credit card. I'd be curious to know. So there's a few. There's a few of us that do. So I don't believe that credit cards are necessarily evil, although you have to manage those in a way that doesn't get you into trouble. Because if you don't, you can really get yourself into a lot of trouble. So to illustrate a point here, I'm going to ask you to be my volunteer, if you don't mind. So if you wouldn't mind coming up on stage here. So I want to talk about how credit card debt starts to happen. Is this on? So when we think about debt, and we think about credit card debt specifically, a lot of times, that card, that little plastic piece of material, it's very innocent looking, right? It's something that's in your pocket. It's something that's very easy to go to the store and use, and you scan it and you're done, and you walk out and you have whatever you're trying to buy. But what we don't realize is the accumulation that can happen over time if you stack debt on top of debt on top of debt. So, what was your name? Peyton. So we have Peyton here, and Peyton has, I'm going to pretend you're a freshman in college. I don't think you are, but pretend you're a freshman. And you have entered college, and you're starting to have a lot of fun. And, you have a credit card, and you're trying to be responsible with your money, but things come up that you didn't have in high school that might come up. And so what's happened over this first month is you've been asked by some friends to go to a tech game. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. So you go to the tech game. Then you go out to eat afterwards. And then the next week you want to take your girlfriend to the movies. Do you have a girlfriend? He's available. So you want to take your girlfriend to the movies. So you do that. And then you have to pay for some things that aren't quite as fun, like textbooks and other things like that. And before you know it, you've put quite a bit on this credit card that you haven't been really keeping track of. So this stack of paper here is going to represent, if you want to step this way, is going to represent the amount of debt that he's put on his credit card for this month. Okay? That's not too bad. It's it's reasonable. Or he thinks it's reasonable. A few more there. And what's really cool is he gets his credit card bill, and at the top of the credit card bill, it shows his balance. It shows what he owes here. But then right next to that, it shows you a minimum payment. And that minimum payment is only $25. So Peyton's thinking, wow, I put all these bills on this credit card, and I can't pay for this because I don't have enough money to pay off my debt, but I do have $25. And if I pay the credit card company $25, well then that's all they want, that's all they need. So he pays me $25 as the credit card company, and I say thank you very much. So the next month rolls around, and this month he's thinking, last month I really probably spent too much, and I wasn't keeping track of my expenses. So this month I'm going to be better. I'm going to watch what I'm spending, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not overspending. But the problem is his car broke down. So then he had to fix his car, and he had to put in a pretty big chunk of money on the credit card because he didn't have another way to pay for that. And so the next month rolls around, and his debt has increased because he wasn't able to pay the last month. He only paid the minimum payment. So now he has even more debt. And then there's that fun little minimum payment that he has the ability to do. So he pays me that again. And I say thank you very much. But now he's got quite a bit more debt here. Well, the next month rolls around, and you stack on a little bit more. The next month rolls around, you stack on a little bit more. Oh, I don't think you paid me the minimum payment that last month. So sorry about having to do this, but I'm going to have to stack on some late fees there for you. Oh, and by the way, remember that discussion we had on credit scores? Yeah, your credit score just got dinged because you didn't pay me on time. So now your credit score is taking a hit, and you've racked up all this debt. I could keep going here, but I think you get the point that is that kind of getting heavy? A little bit? I mean, not for you, but if we kept going, it's going to get heavier and heavier, and at some point, it's going to get up to his eyes where he's not going to be able to see. Thank you. Put that down. And that's what debt can do to you. It can absolutely bury you if you're not careful and you let it stack and stack up and stack up each month. This is an example of debt. So you have some credit card debt of $1,000. If you're only paying $20, that minimum payment, that you have the ability to do at an average interest rate, in this case of 14.95%. That's the average rate, by the way. That there's a lot of credit cards that are much higher than that. But if you had $1,000, $20 a minimum payment, it's going to take you over 6.5 years to pay that off. 6.5 years. That's a long time. And that's assuming that you don't put any more debt on top of that. So that's over $580 in interest that you would have paid on $1,000 worth of debt. Okay, the average person in the U.S. has about $5,000 in debt. That's going to take you over 15 years to pay off if you only pay the minimum payment. So, credit cards. If you choose to have one, and they're certainly not for everyone. But if you choose to have one, track your purchases as you go. It's important to know what you're spending and what you spent. All credit cards have online access where you can look at your balance and make sure that you're keeping track of that. Pay off the balance in full each month and pay it on time. If you don't pay it off in full, what happens? That double-digit interest that they're going to charge you is going to be charged on that balance if you don't pay it off. Keep only one card. When you walk by that stand that has a free T-shirt, don't apply for a credit card every time you get a free T-shirt or a free hat. You only need one card if you're going to have one. And there's what's called a secured credit card. If you can't manage the traditional credit card or feel like you can, there's a way to still have a card. It's called a secured card, where you can put money on that and have a certain balance on that card that you can't go over. So that's an option as well. So some takeaways here. Sometimes debt is difficult, if not impossible, to avoid, like a home loan, possibly a student loan. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but you don't need a credit card to build your credit score. Building your credit score can be done via paying your cell phone, paying your utility bills on time. So you don't have to have a credit card. That's a misnomer. If you choose to have one, pay it off in full each month, pay it on time, keep only one card. In the bottom here, I should have put in bold neon flashing. If you can't resist the urge to rack up debt on your credit card, then just do without it. I can't put it more plainly or bluntly than that. Just do without it if you can't resist the urge to rack up debt. So this guy is sitting down with his son, and he's going over this chart that has mortgages and taxes and utilities and all this fun stuff on it. And the mom walks in, and he says, "Well, you told me to have a talk with him about the facts of life." I tried to have a little humor in here as we're talking about budgeting. But, the way, we know credit card debt's bad. We know that we need to manage our debt if we have it. So how do you do that? Well, it's with a budget. And budgets get a very bad rap. And the reason budgets get a bad rap is because they require restraint. They require us to do without. If you have a budget, you have to spend, or you have to spend what you make. In our society today, what do we get bombarded with all the time with advertising? It's buy it now, worry about it later. Buy it now, no interest for 6 months, or buy it now, 0% interest, etc. There's all sorts of bombardment on us every day about buying it now, paying for it later. Well, if you have a budget, you can't do that. Budget's very simple. It's made up of two things. It's made up of what you make and what you spend. And if you make this much, you can only spend this much. If you make this much and you're spending this much, the only way you're doing that's with a credit card, and you're going to get yourself into trouble. So I'll show you an example of a budget here in a moment, but a few tips as we look at this. Don't make it complicated. You don't need a bunch of fancy spreadsheets to put a budget together. Excel has some great templates that you can use. Find one that's easy for you to follow and easy to use, but don't make it complicated. If you have the ability, involve your family. You need to be on the same page with your family in terms of what your spending looks like and what your income. If you're expecting, mom and dad to give you $100 a month and they're not planning on giving that to you, you probably need to know about that. Pick a time frame that works, whether it's weekly, monthly, or you could do it by semester. I would suggest something shorter time frame, around a weekly or a monthly budget, but pick a time frame. And then a lot of you are in a position where you're just now starting out on your own, and you don't know what your spending is. Well, the only way to know what it is to track it and to make sure that you're keeping your receipts for a little while at least, and making sure that you track your expenses so that you know what your expenses are, and then you can build your budget from there. Some of you already may have a bank account, but if you don't, you want to look for one with free checking. Those are all over the place. And then reconcile your bank statements. That's a thing that a lot of people don't do anymore with the online banking and so forth. But you want to make sure you're tracking that every month as well. So also, you want to plan for emergencies. Things come up in life that are outside the normal course of what you spend. I had a month in April where on Easter Sunday, my plumbing had a major problem, and I had to call out a plumber on Easter Sunday That same month, my daughter had a major dental bill, and my dog got really sick, and we had to take him to the vet. So that was 3 huge expenses that were out of the normal course of a month that we had to account for. And you have to plan for that. You have to know that things are going to come up. And so we want to plan for emergencies. Save for big ticket items. If you're moving into an apartment, for example, and you know that's coming, plan for it. You know that there's going to be deposits and maybe furniture and so forth. Plan for that. If you're planning a spring break trip to Angel Fire, New Mexico to go skiing, plan for that. Make sure that doesn't sneak up on you. And when you're putting your budget together, you need to be sure to differentiate between needs and wants. What are needs? That's rent, utilities, groceries, things that you have to have. Wants are things that you don't necessarily have to have, like going out to eat, going to the movies, etc. But if you differentiate between those two, you have the ability to cut back on those things on the want side if you have to. And this last one here is something you probably won't find in a budgeting book, but it's my own personal opinion. While you're in college, I would really think twice about having a pet. If you already have one, then great. But I would really suggest thinking about that, because pets are expensive. And when you're in college, you don't, in my opinion, need that expense. You got to pay for them, you got to buy them food, you got vet bills, they tear up your furniture. So anyway, if you have one already, I'm not saying to take it to the farm or anything, but think twice if you don't. Okay, so how do we put a budget together? We're going to list your income, and you're going to list your expenses. Now, everybody in the room has a different financial situation. Some of you are working, some of you aren't. Some of you get help from parents, some of you don't. There's financial aid, etc. So everyone's different, but what I'm going to show you as an example can be adapted to whatever your situation is. So I have up here, financial aid, savings, money from parents' income. When I talk about savings here, the way that I personally did it is, after I graduated from high school, I worked very hard over the summer, saved money, and then when I got to college, I didn't really want to have a job when I started college, and so I used that money while I was in college for my expenses. So that's what I'm talking about up here when I say savings. There's not a right or wrong way there, but everyone's going to be a little different. So, and then you're going to have your expenses. This is not an exhaustive list, but it has a lot of the expenses that you'll see as you move into college: tuition, books, room and board, groceries, etc. And we want to account for those. So, in my example here, we have this individual has some wages from a part-time job. He has a little bit coming in from his parents, and then he's using some savings. So he has $850 a month that he has for income. And then I know this is a little small, but what I wanted to illustrate here with the expenses is, again, the notion that when you put your budget together, you need to differentiate between what's a need and what's a want. So you have rent and things like that, but there's also dining out, there's going to the movies, and I have a savings number in there and so forth. So you want to have those expenses lined out so that you can see what possibly could be cut back on if the need was there. But you'll notice at the bottom, the total expenses, you probably can't read it over there, but the total expenses are $850, which is what the income was. And that's an important note. So as we look at some takeaways here for budgeting, recognize the fact that everyone needs one, whether you think you do or not, you do, because they're important to manage your budget and your debt. Involve your family if you can, and select a time frame that works for you. Save enough into an emergency fund to be prepared for unexpected expenses. Save up for big ticket items if you know those are coming, and create a budget that differentiates between those needs and wants. And then I have listed down here at the bottom mint.com, which is a great website that you can use to help you manage your income and expenses, and it's a free website that you can use. So I would encourage you to look there if you need some help as well. With that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. There's some cookies and water, and then we'll reconvene here in 10 minutes.